If you ever wondered why women lose interest, drift away, or stop respecting you, it's not because you weren't good enough. It's because you did one of these 6 things. Things most men never realize they're doing wrong until it's too late. When a man begins to chase validation, he unknowingly hands over his power. Validation is like a drug. It gives you a temporary high, but it always leaves you empty once it fades. Most men don't realize that the need to be approved, liked, or constantly reassured by a woman slowly erodes their masculine energy. It's not that wanting appreciation is wrong. It's that depending on it becomes emotional slavery. When you start measuring your worth through her responses, her affection, or her moods, you begin to operate from a place of fear. You start adjusting your tone, your opinions, even your behavior, just to make sure she stays happy with you. That's not love. That's dependency disguised as care. Women can sense this immediately. The moment a man's confidence begins to revolve around her approval, she stops feeling secure in his presence. She might still care for him, but she won't feel the same attraction, because what she once admired in him, his certainty, has now been replaced with insecurity. True masculine energy is not loud or controlling. It's calm, grounded, and certain. When you command respect, you don't need to demand it. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth, because it's already clear in the way you carry yourself, in the way you speak, and in the way you set boundaries. Women are naturally drawn to men who respect themselves, who know who they are, and who don't bend their truth for temporary affection. When you start seeking validation, you unconsciously tell her, "You define me." But when you command respect, you communicate, "I define myself." That difference is everything. It changes the way she looks at you, the way she feels around you, and the way she values your presence. Respect is not something you ask for. It's something you create through consistency, self-discipline, and emotional balance. Every time you go out of your way to please her, to prove your worth, or to win her approval, you're sending the message that you're not enough as you are. You start doing things not because they align with your values, but because you're afraid of losing her interest. And ironically, that fear becomes the very reason she pulls away. A woman feels safest with a man who doesn't need her validation to feel significant. She feels secure when she knows that no matter what happens, he won't crumble emotionally or lose his identity. When a man stands in his truth, firm yet kind, confident yet humble, a woman feels inspired to trust him. That trust is built not from perfection, but from authenticity. Commanding respect also means holding your boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. It's saying no when something doesn't align with your principles, even if it risks disappointing her. It's walking away from disrespect without drama, without needing to prove a point. It's maintaining your composure when she tests your limits, because deep down, she's not testing to break you. She's testing to see if you can hold yourself together under pressure. A man who knows his worth doesn't chase after validation, because he understands that his value is not determined by how others see him, but by how deeply he knows himself. When you carry yourself with quiet confidence, you naturally earn the respect of others, not through manipulation or effort, but through the energy of certainty that says, "I am enough with or without approval." And that energy, that self-assured calmness, speaks louder than any words ever could. One of the biggest mistakes many men make early in a connection is oversharing too soon. They mistake vulnerability for openness and assume that by revealing everything about themselves right away, they'll appear honest, deep, or emotionally intelligent. But what often happens is the opposite. The woman loses curiosity. Human psychology works in a simple way. We value what we have to discover. When everything is laid bare from the beginning, there's nothing left to explore. Attraction fades not because the man is unworthy, but because the mystery, the essential spark of intrigue, disappears. A woman's attraction is deeply tied to emotional curiosity. She wants to uncover who you are, to peel back the layers slowly, to feel that she's earned access to your deeper world. But when you give it all away without timing or pacing, you rob her of that emotional journey. It's like reading the final chapter of a novel before you've even met the characters. There's no suspense, no emotional investment, no reason to stay engaged. Men who overshare often do it with the best intentions. They think honesty will make them trustworthy, that showing emotional depth will make her feel closer. But the problem isn't honesty, it's emotional pacing. Vulnerability is powerful only when it's earned. When you open up too quickly before a foundation of mutual respect and emotional safety is built, your truth can be misinterpreted. She might not yet have the emotional context to understand your experiences, your pain, or your dreams. What you intended as connection might instead come across as emotional dumping. You're not wrong for wanting to share, but timing is everything. A strong man doesn't hide his emotions. He simply knows when and how to share them. He understands that emotional depth isn't about spilling everything. It's about revealing just enough to invite curiosity while maintaining self-respect. Mystery doesn't mean manipulation or playing games. It means having emotional discipline. It means letting her earn your story instead of handing it to her all at once. The moments she gets glimpses into who you are, a subtle story from your past, a quiet mention of something meaningful, a brief display of inner strength. Those are what spark fascination. She starts to wonder what drives you, what you've been through, what kind of man you are beneath the surface. That curiosity is what builds emotional attraction. When you give everything too soon, she doesn't have the chance to wonder. She's already seen all the cards, and the mystery that keeps her emotionally invested vanishes. Holding a little mystery also reflects confidence. It says you're not trying to impress her or seek sympathy. You're allowing her to discover you naturally in time. You're not afraid to keep parts of yourself private until she's proven worthy of them. That energy is powerful. It communicates self-control, emotional strength, and self-worth. A man who knows his value doesn't rush to be understood. He's patient. He lets the connection unfold at its own pace because he knows that genuine intimacy can't be forced. Oversharing too soon might feel like closeness, but it's often a subtle form of seeking validation, hoping that if she knows everything, she'll stay. But the truth is, she'll stay when she wants to know more, not when she already knows it all. One of the most damaging things a man can do in any relationship is to beg for attention. When you chase a woman's attention, when you constantly try to remind her of your presence, you're not building connection, you're creating pressure. And pressure kills attraction. Women are naturally drawn to energy that feels calm, certain, and self-assured. When you start calling too often, texting repeatedly, or finding excuses to be noticed, what you're really communicating is emotional dependence. You're saying, I need you to validate that I matter. And when that energy shows up, it makes her feel suffocated rather than desired. A woman doesn't want to be the center of a man's world. She wants to be part of a man's world, one that already has purpose, focus, and drive. When your energy shifts from self-grounded to needy, she feels it instantly. Her instincts tell her that she's dealing with a man who doesn't know how to stand on his own emotional foundation. Creating presence, on the other hand, is about the energy you carry when you're not trying. True presence is magnetic. It's not about how often you reach out. It's about what she feels when you do. When you know your worth, when you're deeply focused on your goals, and when your energy is calm and certain, you command attention without asking for it. Presence is built from self-respect and a clear sense of direction. You don't have to chase her to make her feel seen. Your composure and emotional balance naturally draw her in. She senses that you're not desperate for connection because you're already connected to yourself. That's the kind of energy that makes her think about you even when you're not around. She wonders what you're doing, how you're feeling, what's on your mind. Not because you're constantly reminding her, but because you've left emotional space for her curiosity to grow. Begging for attention usually comes from fear of being forgotten, fear of losing relevance, fear of not being enough. But those fears only exist when you place your value in her reactions. When a man's identity revolves around whether a woman is texting him back or giving him time, he becomes emotionally unstable. Every silence feels like rejection, and every delay feels like loss. But a man rooted in self-awareness understands that his worth doesn't fluctuate with her level of engagement. He knows that attention is not love, and love is not control. He's comfortable giving her space because he's confident in the connection he brings. When she senses that emotional security in him, she begins to value his presence more deeply. Space becomes an amplifier of desire, not a signal of distance. To create presence, you must learn the power of stillness, the ability to be at peace without constant reassurance. A man who embodies presence can walk into a room and command respect without saying a word. It's in the way he carries himself, listens, and moves through the world with intention. Women notice that energy because it feels safe, grounded, and masculine. Presence says, I'm here and I don't need to prove it. That energy gives her the freedom to lean in rather than pull away. When you stop begging for attention and start living with purpose, you replace pressure with attraction. Instead of asking her to notice you, you become the kind of man she wants to notice. Not because you demanded it, but because your calm confidence made her feel it. Emotional recklessness is one of the most silent but destructive forces in a relationship. Many men believe that expressing emotion means losing control, while others think that suppressing emotion means being strong. The truth is, neither extreme builds respect or attraction. Real strength lies in calmness, in the ability to feel deeply, yet respond with clarity, not chaos. When a man reacts impulsively, yells, sulks, or withdraws every time he feels triggered, what he communicates to a woman is instability. She starts to feel unsafe, not because of physical fear, but because of emotional unpredictability. A woman needs to feel that the man she's with can hold his ground when things get heavy, that he won't fall apart under pressure or let his emotions dictate his actions. Emotional recklessness destroys that sense of safety. It tells her that your feelings have more control over you than your sense of direction. Being calm doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean ignoring your emotions or pretending you don't care. It means understanding them, regulating them, and communicating them with maturity. A calm man doesn't bottle up anger or sadness. He processes them. He takes a step back before reacting, evaluates the situation, and decides how to respond with intention instead of impulse. That's the difference between emotional weakness and emotional intelligence. A man who's calm under tension earns a woman's trust because she knows his emotions aren't wildfires. They're controlled flames that bring warmth, not destruction. She feels she can lean into his presence without fearing that he'll explode, withdraw, or punish her with silence. Men who are emotionally reckless often come from a place of insecurity. They react because they want to be heard, validated, or proven right. But every time you let your emotions lead without reflection, you give away your power. The man who can stay grounded, even when he's hurt, angry, or disappointed, communicates immense inner strength. His calmness becomes his authority. He doesn't need to raise his voice to make a point. His energy speaks for him. And that kind of controlled strength is deeply attractive because it provides something rare in today's world, emotional safety. Women crave that kind of stability, not because they want to control a man, but because they want to feel anchored in his presence. When a man learns to master his emotions, he doesn't become detached. He becomes dependable. He listens before he speaks, reflects before he reacts, and leads with intention rather than ego. He can handle difficult conversations without turning them into battles. He can disagree without disrespect. He can express pain without trying to inflict it on someone else. That kind of emotional composure creates trust, and trust deepens connection. True masculinity is not about being unshakable like a stone. It's about being steady like a river, flowing, adaptive, yet always in control of direction. Calmness is not weakness. It's the sign of a man who knows himself so well that nothing outside of him can easily break his peace. When you embody that kind of emotional discipline, you don't just gain respect, you command it, not through dominance, but through quiet, unwavering strength that makes everyone around you feel grounded. One of the most painful lessons a man can learn is that lowering your standards to keep a woman never makes her stay. It only makes her lose respect for you. When a man begins to bend his boundaries, ignore his values, or tolerate behavior that goes against his principles, he sends a silent message. I'll accept less than I deserve just to keep you. At first, it might seem like love, like understanding, like patience, but underneath it's fear. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of losing the connection he's worked so hard to build. Yet every time he allows something that doesn't align with his self-respect, he chips away at his own identity. You can't truly love someone while betraying yourself in the process. A woman might appreciate your efforts for a moment, but eventually she begins to feel that something is missing: your strength, your conviction, your backbone. And when that happens, the attraction that once drew her to you begins to fade. A man's standards are not rules meant to control others. They're boundaries that define his worth. They represent how much he values his time, energy, and emotional investment. When you have strong standards, you're not trying to prove anything. You're simply living by your truth. But when you start compromising them just to please her, you lose your center. You find yourself agreeing to things that make you uncomfortable, apologizing for things that weren't your fault, or staying silent when you should have spoken up. And the worst part is, the more you give in, the less she values what you offer. A woman doesn't respect a man who lets her walk over his principles. She may like the attention, the effort, or the convenience of having someone who never says no, but deep down, she won't admire him. Admiration is the foundation of lasting attraction. Once that's gone, no amount of effort can bring it back. Keeping your standards means being willing to lose someone who doesn't align with them. It means understanding that love built on compromise of values is never real stability. It's temporary comfort. A man who truly respects himself knows that walking away from what's wrong for him is an act of strength, not pride. He knows that being alone with self-respect is far better than being with someone who only values him when he bends. And ironically, that's the very energy that makes women respect and desire him more. When she realizes you're not afraid to enforce your boundaries, she feels that your love has depth. It's not needy or weak. It's grounded and real. A woman will test a man's standards, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, to see how firm he truly is. Every test is an invitation for him to show who he really is. Will he compromise to keep her happy, or will he stand by what he knows is right? The man who chooses integrity over temporary validation earns lasting respect. When you keep your standards, you show her that your love has structure, that you're not just emotionally available, but emotionally strong. You're not controlling her. You're leading with clarity. You're showing that while you care deeply, you'll never let that care cost you your self-worth. That's the essence of masculine presence, not dominance, but discipline, not arrogance, but assurance. It's understanding that your standards aren't walls to keep love out, but boundaries to ensure that what comes in is worthy of staying. One of the most overlooked truths about attraction is that it's not built on looks, wealth, or charm. It's built on growth. A man who stops evolving, who becomes comfortable with mediocrity, slowly loses the spark that once made him magnetic. Growth is the pulse of masculine energy. It's what gives life direction, purpose, and drive. When a man is moving forward, when he's constantly learning, improving, and pushing beyond his comfort zone, he radiates energy that inspires those around him. A woman feels drawn to that movement, not because of the results, but because of what it represents: discipline, ambition, and inner fire. But when a man becomes stagnant, when he stops striving for something greater, the light within him begins to dim. He becomes predictable, uninspired, and emotionally flat. That's when attraction starts to fade, not because she stopped loving him, but because he stopped being the man she once admired. Growth doesn't just mean financial or career success. It means emotional, intellectual, and spiritual evolution. A man who invests in his mind, who learns from failure, and who works on his emotional intelligence becomes rare. He doesn't stay stuck in cycles of insecurity or self-doubt because he knows he's responsible for his own transformation. When a woman sees a man committed to his growth, she feels safe, not because he's perfect, but because he's progressing. She knows he won't stay stuck in the same arguments, the same patterns, or the same fears. He's adaptable, self-aware, and willing to evolve. That kind of man is a constant source of inspiration, not just to his partner, but to everyone around him. His energy is contagious because it represents hope, the quiet confidence that tomorrow he'll be stronger, wiser, and more grounded than he was yesterday. Stagnation, on the other hand, slowly erodes attraction. It starts when a man stops chasing purpose and begins living for comfort. He loses curiosity, ambition, and vision. He starts living on autopilot. The same conversations, the same mindset, the same excuses. And the worst part is, he may not even notice the shift. But a woman does. She feels it in his presence, in his energy, in the way he stops leading with intention. When a man's life stops expanding, so does the emotional connection between him and his partner. She starts to feel like she's with a version of him that's frozen in time. A woman doesn't lose interest because she wants more. She loses interest because she no longer feels inspired by the man she's with. Continuous growth is not about chasing success to impress anyone. It's about fulfilling your own potential. It's about refusing to settle for the man you were yesterday. Every challenge, every setback, every failure becomes fuel for your evolution. The man who grows doesn't need validation because his progress speaks for itself. He commands respect without asking for it because his life reflects direction and purpose. Growth keeps a man's energy alive. It keeps him interesting, unpredictable, and grounded in ambition. And that is what keeps attraction alive. Not the pursuit of perfection, but the relentless pursuit of becoming better, stronger, and more self-aware with each passing day.